And once again, brought to you by PaintballToTheEnd.com.
Welcome to 10 Minute Marks. I know it's been a little while since we've done an episode, but we're back and we've got a very special one for you tonight. Once again, I'm Paul.
I am Jeff, and this is episode number 30. And tonight we'll be discussing which organization had a better chance of survival, ECW or WCW. Both of them pretty much conked out at the same time, early 2000, 2001. And we're going to be discussing which had a better chance of surviving up until now. And with that, I will start with Paul, and he'll go over ECW and some of WCW.
The major thing that ECW had, and this is a no-brainer to anyone who's a wrestling fan, is they had Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman was a genius, and I know some wrestlers have said over the years he wasn't that great as a manager. I know Lance Storm said it, the Dudley Boys have said it, Jericho's said it, but on the flip side, he was a genius, and he knew how to book smart. And obviously that brings me to number two, is they had a lot of talented young wrestlers. They had a couple of stars like Bam Bam Bigelow, I think. I remember him, but that's about the only big name that I remember that they had.
They brought in Jake the Snake Roberts, they brought in Marty Jannetty, they brought in a couple others, but yeah, mainly young guys.
Yeah. Because of ECW, you had like stars jump from ECW to WCW and get higher. But ECW is the first one to notice people like Chris Benoit, Chris Jericho, Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko,
Rey Mysterio.
Rey Mysterio, that was a huge one. Tommy Dreamer, Raven, the list goes on and on. They booked, basically, Paul Heyman booked them. He attributed their strengths and kind of hid their weaknesses. And that was kind of his philosophy when doing ECW. The other thing about ECW that was great for its time especially, they had the alternative factor. I believe it was Paul Heyman that once said that ECW is like Nirvana. Because before Nirvana came along, before grunge basically hit everything, you had like Poison, Guns N' Roses, Whitesnake, Motley Crue, and they were at the top of the chart. And all of a sudden when Nirvana hits it big, that was when the MTV generation started to come big, and all of a sudden you've got a totally different music landscape. Same it was with ECW, because I think the crowd wanted a change, and that forced the bigger companies to change, like WCW and WWF at the time. So that gave its unique edge as opposed to the white bread WWF, WCW at the time, where it was pretty much, big production values, better equipment, and Hulk Hogan and whatnot.
Hulk Hogan being the big name in there because people were getting tired of the whole character of Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, because times were changing, and ECW was there at the right place, at the right time, doing a little bit of grittier wrestling, a little bit more down and dirty, bare knuckles fist, not bare knuckles fist fight, but you know what I mean. That whole, it looked like it was sort of like a better version of backyard wrestling.
Right.
So
more organized.
Yes, but on the negative side with ECW was they didn't have a lot of money and a lot of production value. Obviously, if you were to watch an old ECW where they only had 3 cameras for the whole show, as opposed to like WCW having like 7 or 8, or
right.
WWF having 7 or 8.
At least. Yeah,
at least. So, and they didn't have pyro. They didn't have huge like wrestling packages that you would see like in WWE or WCW. It was very much bare bones. I mean, it wasn't that far above backyard wrestling. But then again, some people may argue that was part of the charm because it was different.
It wasn't pre-packaged. It was pretty much take it as it is.
Yeah.
Right.
They had lack of network support because once they got on the TNN, they were on like at some odd. Yeah, midnight, 11 o'clock at night or whatever, whereas you had, the Monday Night Wars being on at Monday night at 7 or 8. So, that's another reason ECW fell. Another reason I think, this one's kind of a double-edged sword. the true ECW fans understood that it wasn't just about barbed wire. It wasn't just about flaming tables. It wasn't just about a brawl, backstage brawls, with chairs and things. ECW had a lot of things going for it. They had they brought Lucha Libre to America, and they brought, they concentrated on, the cruiserweights even. They concentrated on, with their mid-card, taking people like Benoit and Eddie who could mat wrestle, and they could go ahead and put them in the middle of the card, and people were like, oh, so they also had these guys that can wrestle. With ECW, it was like that, but at the same time, I kind of feel like it didn't cater to the masses. I kept hearing Bubba Ray say. And I think you could still have ECW cater, but at the same time, you would have to, I think, tone down the violence a little bit. Mm-hmm. You can't
make
just...
it more mainstream.
Yeah.
Vince McMahon in the ECW video made a very solid point to me when, Paul Heyman came up to him and said, we got a network deal now. And he said, well, you pretty much can't, you've got to tone it down now. You can't, you're not putting a show in front of Southeast Philadelphia now. You're going to the whole nation, and you need to incorporate your show to appease the fans of the whole nation, not just of that one hardcore sector.
Yeah.
So.
And to close my end of it out, because he's going to cover WCW.
Right.
I think ECW, in some respects, would probably fare better in today's. They fell because of the violence, and I think network support. I think network support's the big thing. I think if Spike TV today says, hey, let's take ECW and have Paul Heyman run the ship, I think ECW would fare pretty well, especially because of Ultimate Fight now. Ultimate Fight is huge now. So if you were to do an ECW show, tone down the violence a little bit, but still have a little bit in there to have
keep your edge of your storylines and your edge of your matches for the pay-per-views.
Yeah. Right. And I think ECW would fare better than TNA. I honestly would.
Oh, I would agree with that.
Not to diss TNA, but...
Right, yeah, but I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And so we go to WCW, a company full of talent and a company that has all the money in the world to do things with. Money to bring in Hogan, Savage, Hall, Nash, whoever they needed to bring in. A company that was loaded with talent in the mid-1990s and early 1990s. They had Stone Cold Steve Austin at one time. They had Mick Foley. They had, moving on a few years, they had Jericho, Benoit, Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, the ones that were in ECW before.
Yeah.
A company loaded with talent if they'd only known what to do with it. The number one reason I think WCW failed was it did not have that one person, aside from Bischoff, that was in charge. That one person that was yay or nay on everything. And, just like WWE had Vince McMahon, WCW had Eric Bischoff, and during its formative years, Bischoff ran the show. And that's what they needed. But then when he left, all hell broke loose. And it's funny how people compare Bischoff to Vince. And they say that WCW came up with Glacier and the Shockmaster and yada, yada, yada. Wasn't it Vince who came up with Bastion Booger and Avatar and Max Moon and all these other characters that just...
Destruction Crew became the Beverly Brothers
the
or something.
Crew became the Beverly Brothers. Smash becomes the Repo Man. It's like, are you kidding me? Vince had worse ideas than Bischoff did. Yeah. And you guys rag on Bischoff. Oh my God. I mean, yeah, the Shockmaster is the worst, but there's not many far behind from Vince's side. But anyway, they still had lots of talent before WWE did. And they just didn't have that person who knew what to do with them. And a lot of that had to do with egos to me. You had your Hogan, your Nash, your Hall, everybody up at the top wanting to keep their spot. Not letting any of the mid-card talent have any shot at anything. There's a reason the Cruiserweight title was titled Purgatory by Chris Jericho. You had the TV title, which, while it meant something and had great wrestlers, it wasn't a vault to... It wasn't like a catapult to the world title like the IC title.
Yeah.
Or the US title. You had all these great matches with Benoit and Booker T, but yet after that they go nowhere. And that to me was a lot of the reason why WCW failed. The lack of management at the top and the inability to give up your ego long enough to have a good feud with someone. Now later on, they did bring in Vince Russo. And for once, I'm going to stick up for the guy. I paid a lot of attention to PW Insider and so forth around this time. And I know that a lot of his ideas were shot down by WCW management. To me, that was a big mistake. Vince Russo could have really saved that company if he'd have been given the reins to do so. And he wasn't. And that to me was a big mistake by WWE. I know they had to keep they had to have their standards. But still. Another big reason why I think WCW failed was I didn't know how to end the NWO. For 2 years it went on, and it's like Paul White said at one point, you walk out, you're walking out with 3 or 4 guys. Next thing you know, there's 30 guys coming behind you in a limo. Nobody wanted to be the victim anymore, so they all joined the NWO.
Yeah.
And that to me was totally, that was the whole plan of the NWO to begin with, but still. The one idea I came up with real quickly was I think they should have had all the mid-card. This could have accomplished 2 things at one time. This could have really bumped up your mid-card talent, and it would have ended the NWO right then and there in a great way, in a very good way that would have put an end to it and a dramatic end to it, and it would have put a solid end to the NWO, which is something they never did. Mm-hmm. I think they should have had all the mid-card talent, Jericho, Benoit, Rey Mysterio, all their good mid-card talent, Eddie Guerrero, come out and take out a member of the NWO one at a time. Knee injury, head injury, break his wrist or something in the ring, during a match. Have the whole WCW talent come together and say, hey, let's just take them out one by one. And then at a pay-per-view, preferably, to me, the preferable choice would have been Bash to the Beach 98, because that would have been 2 years later. Have Hogan, Nash, Hall, and Savage, if you want, or Brett, come out to the ring during a match and have all this talent that just took out everybody surround the ring. And have Sting with his baseball bat in the middle of the ring going, you've got nothing now. You've got no one behind you. We've taken out everybody behind you. You're done. That's it.
That would have been over the top. Oh.
Well, it would have been good, though.
It would have been good.
Especially if you had Sting come down from the rafters. And
oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all.
But to have them come out and interfere in a match, and Sting comes down from the rafters and go, you got nothing now. You're done. All these guys surrounding the ring have just taken you out. And then have the 4 members take off their shirts, leave them in the ring, and walk out. Give Hogan a couple months off, which I'm pretty sure he needed at that time. He'd been running for 2 years straight. And then have him come back with a red and yellow. That's just my idea, though.
I honestly believe, especially now, if ECW had survived, had the network support, and they had all that revenue coming in, I think in the end, ECW would have had a little bit more of a lengthy run. Especially nowadays, as I've already said, Ultimate Fight is huge, and they're kind of the opposite. They're kind of the opposite of WWE, the whole MMA, UFC. And ECW could capitalize, because Paul Heyman loves UFC, and so does The Undertaker. But anyway, Paul Heyman could just say, hey, let's build it sort of like UFC. And I think, I'm kind of one of those guys that's kind of leery of putting, like, chokeholds and things like that in wrestling. But I think with ECW, you could have toned down a little bit of the violence, but you still have some blood in there, like Tommy Dreamer would go up against, Taz, or somebody equivalent of Taz, or if they got Kurt Angle there, and give it that alternative that I think a lot of fans would go for. WWE, I can't really talk about it much now. It's a little bit stale to me. Right. So, it'd be a good alternative. I think just for that alone, I think ECW would survive.
I really have thought this for a long time. I think WCW should still be around. Mm-hmm. And for one solid reason, money. Mm-hmm. They had the money and they had the resources. If Ted Turner would have got up off his butt, this is all he would have needed to do to save WCW. Go out and find somebody. And there's a lot of people out there I think could have done this with WCW. Go out and find that one somebody that could have ran it and known what to do with Bret Hart, known what to do with Goldberg, knowing what to do with Hogan after NWO. Just go out and find that one person or one little group to take over and put it right. Because there was a time where it wasn't broken. And they were trying to fix it anyway.